Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Autism Rocks and Rolls podcast Hijack series. Today's guest, I bring with you Louis Gale. Mr. Gale, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm not too bad. So, tell us your story, man. Take her away.
Okay, well, let's first go back a little bit in terms of how this story came to be. I would say I didn't even think I would ever write a story. I took that typical path of going to school, working in corporate America. I did the real typical thing of just kind of going on that path that so many of us find ourselves on. But what happened was after I clearly saw that not only was my heart shattered in multiple pieces, I was unemployed because I lost my job in corporate America. I wasn't able to find an acting job. I could always get an audition, but I couldn't actually, when they said go, I just couldn't get there. But I knew deep within I had some artistic endeavor. And so what happened, it's kind of surreal in a sense where I started to imagine not just my own heartbreak, but what about the person next to me's heartbreak and the person across the coffee shop's heartbreak. And I started to kind of gather all this fictional information, almost like absorbing different types of emotion into this introduction, really. And so the beginning of the book was written over 10 years ago as kind of just not really an ode to heartbreak, but just really the emotions involved with like just massive heartbreak. And obviously, there's anger, there's aggression, there's misogyny, and that's really the beginning of these forms of psychosis. Even after I wrote the beginning of this introduction, it's only 10 pages, but after I read and saw what I was writing, I closed my computer and I'm like, what am I writing? And within a couple of months, I would actually find myself leaving the States, living in Europe for 2 years, traveling through Europe in a VW, growing a beard, dreadlocks. And for the next 2 years, that's where I was able to finish the first book, a written self portrait on psychosis. In terms of continuing the story, when I got back, and this is where volume two comes into play, and this is available in June, the second part. I wasn't ready to be back. My mom, she had had a heart attack, and I was kind of forced back. And so when I came back after 2 years of just kind of really experiencing life and living, I just wasn't ready. And within a couple of months being back, I would find myself living on the streets for a year. I stopped talking for a year. I was put into a mental hospital for 7 weeks. And the second book is really the fictional version and story of that. What really this has all taught me is the idea that maybe there really is an artist in everybody. Now, I'm not saying that everybody is Van Gogh. I'm not saying everybody is George R. Martin, but I do personally think there is an artistic spark within. I can't draw, so that's not something that I'm going to try. And I tried acting, like I said earlier, but I couldn't ever have the thoughts associated with the acting. It's like I would realize when acting, oh, I know I have to cry now. Well, the character is not going to be thinking that. The character's thoughts have to be linked to the character. In fact, one time in an acting experiment, I actually wrote my own thoughts for the character, but that still didn't work. So I guess what this really has taught me is everyone should really try to find what is their artistic giving. Whether if you have a voice, sing. To me, I feel like you really get to find who people are through their art. And that could be a multitude of stories. It could be happy, sad. It could be love. It could be hate. It could be not just the flat yin yang. It's almost like the yin yang itself is this spherical sphere where there's just so many little different levels. And if you can find what your canvas is, I mean, that's kind of why the book is a written self portrait on psychosis. It's kind of like combining different art forms, at least for me. But so that's really what it's teaching me right now is that everyone really does have that potential artist within. You can find this book pretty much anywhere. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart. It's at Berkeley University, UCLA Library. It's at Pepperdine. It's at 25 different countries. It's still in English, but it's on their platforms. I guess the most important thing to learn in the book is perspective. I usually don't do this, but I'm called to do it. But this MC Escher tattoo got in Berlin. It goes all the way up too. But anyway, the MC Escher tattoo, as a kid, it was like my first real artistic book that I was given. And, you have all these different angles to see things. And that's kind of what this represents, is perspective. I'm in grad school right now, working on a master's into a PhD for psychology at the JFK school. And it's a consciousness program. And since I do consider myself an artist, I mean, yes, my canvas is writing, but it's still sharing part of my soul. But really what I'm trying to understand is different levels of consciousness, and not just human consciousness. I mean, before I left for Berlin, my goal was to get to India and sit under a tree for 6 months. I just wanted to sit under a tree for 6 months. That's all I wanted to do. I didn't get there. My journey was something different. But why can't I understand the level of consciousness of a tree? I mean, geez, a tree has a more complex genetic genome structure. It has the same 100 trillion root synaptic connections that a brain does. I mean, how we evaluate consciousness, I think, is really changing. And so I think as humans, we're lucky because we get to say what we're saying right now. I get to use these hands that can move and move through time and space. And, a tree can't do that. But in terms of conscious level thoughts, I mean, we just assume that what we think is what we think. But I mean, if a goldfish can see beyond our own visual color spectrum, so we see from the red to the purple and that little sliver, but I think a goldfish has like an extra rod or cone. So not only are they seeing red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, but they're also seeing something that we do not. I don't know if it's they're seeing ultraviolet or whatever, x-rays. But the whole point is, don't you think that a species that sees more than we do has to have a brain that can absorb that information? So when you hear those things, oh, goldfish forget every 3 seconds. Really? How do you know? Were you ever a goldfish? Like, are you a goldfish? How would you know for sure? Even if what we think is this center of memory, and we can hook up a goldfish into a CAT scan and put a little cap on them and measure, oh, see, the memory went away. Still, consciousness is different. I mean, why can I only remember a certain memory? Let's say I'm 5 years old and I'm remembering a memory, but then what happened 20 seconds later after that memory? What happened 20 seconds before that memory? I don't know. So maybe that's the same level of a 3-second forgetting in the smaller goldfish brain. Anyway, that's just an idea I'm toying with. Like I said, the first book is available a lot of places, A Written Self-Portrait, On Psychosis. The second one, A Written Self-Portrait on Tragedy, is available around June. I've just began the third one, A Written Self-Portrait on Science/Fiction with a question mark. And the fourth one I'm taking notes on now. It's called A Written Self-Portrait on Politics, but not earthly politics. Earthly politics, way too easy. I mean, just the fact that you see our political climate now, I know it's challenging for us, but in terms of who is involved, that's how you know it's easy. And then also, I've always never liked the idea in politics that one political spectrum is set in place, new one comes aboard, and everything gets erased. I'm trying to develop a kind of conscious level idea of politics where, let's say, one person really needs this to happen and another person really needs that to happen. How can both parties in their own world of consciousness somehow think both are happening? Now, maybe they have to be split on different planets. Maybe their brain has to separate the entanglement at quantum levels to think each is happening. But that's what I'm toying with for the fourth book. And what was writing this book like? Well, it kind of broke my brain a little bit, especially because I ended up not speaking for a year after this first one was written. I mean, that's the balance we have to find. I mean, there's a reason why the most famous self-portrait of Van Gogh, he has that bandage on his ear. He was dealing with some mental health issues, as a lot of artists do. I think as you tap into that just raw energy of unbridled enthusiasm mixed with pain and suffering, and you're trying to capture it in whichever way you can, even if you do capture it on a canvas, a song, after that song is finished, after your picture is painted, after your book is complete, it's not like all that stuff goes away. You still have it within. So it's like, okay, the book is done. My painting's painted. Now what? So it's kind of like the addiction of video game enthusiasts, where it's like, okay, we beat the game. We need another game. Or, you start a poem and you want to write another poem so many times, you're not going to do just one of that. And that's where the artist can find new outlets, new avenues to explore some of these really deep, conscious human ideas that, for the most part, kind of go just into the ethereal nature of, oh, that's interesting. But for the artist, it's not just, oh, that's interesting. It's like, oh, let me devote 3 years of my life to this one idea of silence. What is silence? What is it to not talk? There's the Indian Vipassanas and 2-week meditation retreats. But for me personally, I was actually on my way to Nepal, and I got this horrible feeling in Berlin on my way to go to Kathmandu to do this 2-week meditation. And in the airport, I start hyperventilating. I go to the bathroom in Berlin. I start crying because I really thought I'm about to die. I really thought that. And as I'm about to board the plane in Berlin, I look up and I just think, cancel this. And literally that moment, the flight gets canceled. Well, 2 weeks later, that big earthquake in 2015 hit Kathmandu, destroying 10,000 temples, including the one I was supposed to be at. So, thank God. But that never leaves my mind that I was supposed to do some silence in my life. So that's kind of where the first and second book kind of took me as an artist. Wow, that was fun. Thank you. What else?
All right. So, yes, thank you for your time, Mr. Gale. I think it's going to be very informative when this comes out. But my question is, I want to take you back to when you weren't speaking. I'm going to take you back there. Was there ever a moment or a time where you wanted to talk to someone, but the brain wasn't letting you speak to someone just because of mental health reasons?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when my mom finally found me in Santa Monica Park. My car had got towed. I mean, she comes with my uncle, social workers. I mean, my mom's on her hands and knees, like begging me to get some help. Hindsight, I wish I could go back and be like, but in the moment, it's like my brain was literally traveling in a different dimension. I see it's my mom. I see that she's on her hands and knees crying. I see their social worker. So I do comprehend that level. But also something that was very apparent for me in that moment, I'm not my mom. I'm not these social workers. I'm not allowed words right now. This is a dimension of time and space where words are not allowed. And I wish I could cross over into your realm and give you the help and let you know that everything's okay. But in the moment, I just couldn't. It was almost like a split level of duality self. Um, yeah. So, and there were times when, people would come up to me talking, and in the moment before, it's like, I know there are people existing, but also we're all existing in our own private bubbles. And I just couldn't comprehend, if my bubble is in its own bubble, why would your bubble want to come and engage with mine, especially if I'm not looking to share my bubble space? It was I wanted to be self-contained. But the thing is as humans, in a modern society, that doesn't work. You can't assume people will understand that. And it just doesn't work. And that's why I think if you want that, there are centers for silence and there are places in the mountain. But even some of the ancient gurus and the Chinese philosophies, something about going to a cave and just not being part of society, you really can tap into this raw human nature. But in terms of having that function with friends and family and loved ones and wanting just a simple cup of coffee, it just doesn't work. I mean, so yeah, it was challenging to say the least.
Right. And then, so the first part of this other question I have is, were you in like the good part of the mental health hospital or like the bad part of the mental health hospital? Because we know there's some out there that are in it for the money, but then there's also some that are in there who want to help.
Oh
Were
no,
you in
this
the
was
one for the
this
money or for the mental health?
no, this was definitely for the mental health. Now I will say, when I got arrested in Santa Monica for walking through a crosswalk, green light, just not a man. I had a ticket out for sleeping on the beach. How can I fix a ticket if I'm not talking? So when I was put into the hospital, this was a county hospital where really it's just about, getting some treatment and then put him in outpatient. But I ended up there for 7 weeks. I never even spoke to a doctor because, again, I'm not speaking. But I was able to put together that they were trying to get me to engage. And by the end, they just kind of had to make a decision to start a haloperidol injection treatment against my will. But I'm glad because, they saw that after 6 weeks, I'm still not even part of anything. And so it was almost like a decision, not a 51-50, but just like, okay, well, if he's not willing to even speak with us, let's just assume he's schizophrenic, which I wasn't, because I wasn't actually seeing things, I wasn't hearing things, and I wasn't paranoid. But from the staff of the hospital, from the doctor's perspective, what else could they assume? Now we see in the new DSM 5 from 2014, there are new guidelines to some of the big mental health, bipolar, depression, schizophrenia. There is a spiritual emergency aspect. When the ancient shamans 2,000 years ago were writhing on the floor, tapping into the nature of spirit, they were revered and they were shamans and they were holy men. Now, Western culture, we are quick to diagnose and just assume. So I was on a heavy dose of medicine, antipsychotics, for a year or two, and it kind of really did worse damage for me. I gained almost 75 pounds, and I tried to write again, and I would be at the computer, and for like 3 hours, all I'd be able to come up with is like 2 sentences. And I was just like, but you don't realize it. So it's kind of like in that episode, in that movie, A Beautiful Mind, when Nash gets part of the medicine and he's like showing his colleagues the work. And it's like almost like tic-tac-toe Scrabble. And they're just like, yeah, you don't realize it. But in the moment, I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm just having writer's block or something. But I was able to get 2 different doctors to reevaluate. And now it's not that. I've been off medicine for almost 5 years. So yeah, there are definitely different types of mental health facilities. In the second book, I have fictional pages and pages of transcripts between the character and the doctor. These are fiction, but I do kind of take you through what a hospital idea is for the second book on tragedy. So I was lucky enough that this was more focused on really finding a way to get me that was on the streets into a stable environment. And that happened.
Well, take us through a bit right now. Grab that book right there, and I want you to read maybe a page or two.
Okay, you tell me when.
Now.
Lost an entire year of his life, all because of a simple mistiming issue. I gotta say, though, it was pretty sad to see his face when he finally figured it all out. It was so realistic, too, and of course, tragic. I guess most tragedies are realistic. His mother listened so intently that it takes her a few seconds to respond. How is Jesus? She asks. You know I've always loved him. Yeah, I know, he's okay. I guess we both thought living with each other was going to be different than it actually is. How so? It's hard to say. I mean, I always knew Jesus did a lot of things to expand his mind, but to have it so close to me now, well, it's just a little off putting. And of course, he's always like, dude, you really do need to open up and expand your mind, and you should do this, and you should do that, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, you know my policy on people who say should a lot. I mean, I'm open, not as open as him, of course, but that's Jesus for you. Are you taking any drugs? What? Mom, don't ask me that question. I mean, really, don't ask me that. First of all, I never like to answer questions that I myself would never ask. And second, you're my mom, so it's already kind of tainted. His mother puts down the spatula and looks to her son in disbelief. You think because I'm your mother, it's tainted? Wow, Amstel, you really have no idea about anything. She shakes her head and goes back to her bacon. I didn't mean it like that. His mother almost throwing the spatula against the stove. Well, how did you mean it then? What have I always told you? Say what you mean, for Christ's sakes. This is your biggest problem. You're just talking to hear yourself talk most of the time. Okay. I mean, he thinks deeply for a few seconds, then continues. Well, I don't know what I mean. Then don't speak. Amstel nods while his mother brings over her breakfast plate of bacon, the golden beam of light still moving throughout the kitchen. Amstel sits there, watching his mother eat bacon while the dust flies about. In silence, they sit.
All right, folks. To learn more about that book, check this guy's information out. Thank you again, Luis. I had a great time, bub.
Thank you, Sam. Really appreciate it.